Does upgrading equipment past +10 do anything outside of Operation Siren? Is a question that I often get, and surprisingly, there isn't a resource that answers the question directly and concisely. The short answer is yes. At +11, 12, and 13, it grants the equipment a 4%, 10%, and 18% increase in damage over their +10 counterpart, but does not affect reload. Now, if you want to know more, I will explain in detail what is actually going on behind the scenes, some common traps that people fall into, and my personal recommendations on what I believe is a good way to spend your first gold plates. Even though there are many resources for how to prioritize upgrading your equipment, it's quite difficult to find information about what exactly is happening under the hood when you upgrade an equipment to +13, and a lot of it is hidden from the game. Starting off with guns, all guns have a coefficient stat that, for whatever reason, isn't shown in-game. It's just a multiplier on the damage of the gun. You can find the coefficient of every single gun on the wiki. This is the page called List of Battleship Guns, where you can see the coefficient of each battleship gun. And the damage coefficient is the reason that some guns, like the Champagne gun, are recommended even though it may look weaker just from base damage alone. Switching to the game, when you try to upgrade a +10 equipment, it shows Operation Siren bonus going from 0% to 1%, and damage modifier going from level 0 to level 1. My game is in Japanese, so feel free to follow along with a random piece of equipment in your game. The level 1 damage modifier increases the gun's coefficient by 4%, level 2 damage modifier increases the coefficient by 10%, and level 3 damage modifier increases the coefficient by 18%. Note that it is increasing the coefficient by those numbers, and not simply adding 4, 10, and 18% to whatever the base coefficient is. On the wiki page, it shows you directly in a table what the increases result in at each level, but each row is just the same 4, 10, and 18% increase over different base numbers. For example, looking at the last row of base 130%, if we multiply 130% by 1.18, we get 153.4%, rounded down to 153%, as opposed to adding 18% onto 130% and getting 148%. Similar to guns, torpedoes also have the coefficient and work the exact same way when you upgrade them past +10. Anti-air guns do not have the coefficient, but they still have the damage modifier level. Instead of the coefficient, the damage modifier of anti-air guns increase their damage directly. I have no idea why it works like this, but that's just how it works. Next, let's move on to planes. Planes don't have a hidden coefficient, but you can see the same increases in damage if you open the hidden tabs in-game. For example, when I try upgrading the Tenra here, there are 3 lines that can be opened. The first 2 are the anti-air guns on the plane, and the third one is the bomb damage, which is what most people are probably interested in. Opening that up, we see that it increases from 432 damage to 450 damage, which is once again an increase of 4%. Then, looking at a +13 Tenrai, its bombs deal 510 damage, which is an 18% increase over the base of 432. On the List of Dive Bombers page on the wiki, there isn't the same table with damage modifiers as the list of guns, since planes don't have the damage coefficient. But the Max Enhanced tab contains the damage numbers of +13 equipment, while the Max Rarity tab contains the damage numbers of +10 equipment, so you can go back and forth and compare between the two. Upgrading auxiliary equipment directly shows you the stat increase at each level, so there's not much to explain there. However, anti-submarine equipment like Hedgehogs and anti-submarine planes have the same damage modifier as AA guns, giving them the same 4, 10, and 18% extra damage at each level past +10. Okay, that should be it as far as what upgrading the equipment does. But I will also mention that the Operation Siren bonus of 3% is additive with the 15% Siren Killer of research ships, up to a maximum of 20%. This means that the modifier for research ships Caps has just 2 pieces of plus 13 equipment, so it's not necessary to give them plus 13 anti-air guns in order to maximize their damage. Now, there are a couple of common misunderstandings that I've seen people make. The first is upgrading equipment to plus 13 just because it is good at plus 10. The reason that this isn't always a good idea is because some equipment are used more for their low cooldown and not their raw damage alone, and upgrading them past plus 10 does not reduce cooldown any further. A couple examples of equipment I would not personally recommend upgrading despite being very good are the prototype twin 406mm SKC and the dive bomber Suisei Kai, both of which are primarily used for their relatively low cooldowns without sacrificing too much damage. The second trap that people fall into is upgrading multiple pieces of equipment to plus 11 or plus 12, as opposed to one at a time to plus 13. Going from 4% to 10% is an increase of almost 6%, and going from 10% to 18% is an increase of over 7%. And no matter how you try to math it, you will always get the biggest increase out of your plates from taking one piece of equipment to plus 13 at a time, mainly because plus 11 is the weakest level. Additionally, almost no 2 equipment slots are the same, and stronger slots will be able to make more out of one piece of equipment, as opposed to having multiple half-upgraded equipment occupying weaker slots. I know there are people who, despite what I just said, will still quote-unquote disagree with me as if it's a matter of opinion. And if that's you, then I suggest learning to breathe through your nose before worrying about optimization. Now, I will give you my personal recommendation for what to upgrade first. This part is actually an opinion that people may reasonably disagree with, so feel free to search around for other opinions before making your final decision. Rainbow equipment, while in many cases are the best equipment for their use case, cost 3 times as much to upgrade to plus 13 compared to plus 10 equipment. Therefore, to get the most bang for your buck immediately, you should prioritize gold rarity equipment that are still useful even after you get plus 13 rainbow equipment, starting with Wayne Fleet equipment, which usually deal more damage than Vanguard equipment. For gun plates, I would suggest starting with 2 champagne guns, aka the prototype triple 406mm MLE, and after that, saving plates for at least 1 Rainbow 406 MK7 would probably be a good idea. Next, for plain plates, JU87s are a very good option as there is no rainbow replacement for it at the moment. Ryusei and Saoyun are also valid options as they differ slightly from JU87, but are more or less interchangeable for a newer player, but I wouldn't upgrade more than one of the other ones to plus 13 to start. The BF109G is also a very good option, but has a pretty big weakness against heavy and is quite useless in campaign, so I would put it lower than the JU87. Once you've gotten enough of those, it'll be time for Tenrise and Sky Raider if you have it. For torpedo plates, I would recommend upgrading at least 3 sets of quad mags and the limited DDG missile if you have it, as well as 6 bitters to plus 13. If you primarily play on manual, then the British Quint 533mm torpedoes that fire in a straight line should be priority. You will eventually run out of things to spend your torpedo plates on before anything else, except maybe anti-air, at which point you can upgrade whatever torpedoes you want just for fun. As for anti-air gun plates, I would recommend upgrading the Rainbow anti-air guns as soon as you get them, but having 1 or 2 sextuple Bofors would be a good idea as well, before you're able to get your hands on the Rainbow guns. Finally, for aux plates, I would recommend upgrading shells, Admiralty fire control radar, and steam catapults depending on how many battleships and carriers are in your most commonly used fleets, and consider upgrading the Hedgehog to plus 13 whenever you feel like you're ready to tackle Chapter 14. Okay, I think that should be everything, but if I missed something or you have any other tips, feel free to leave a comment to help the others out. There may be some troll comments, but I will heart the ones that I endorse as important. If you want more informative equipment content, I am planning on making more, so do subscribe to see when they go live. but you can always catch me when I stream and ask me any questions directly. Thanks for watching.